Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags and Metal Reviews, and today we're giving you guys our first impressions from the new releases from Sleep Token, The Bunny the Bear, Behemoth, and Ghost Bath. What a mix of artists today.
A wild mix right there, yeah.
And we're going to revisit our friend Sleep Token, start out with Even in Arcadia. We reviewed Take Me Back to Eden from 2 years ago. I believe you gave it a 5. I gave it a toe tag. It was my #1 album of 2023. I still love it. It's just one of my favorite albums just in general. It was magic. So the main question for me was, can they bring the magic back? We reacted to only one of the 3 singles, and that was Emergence, which I generally enjoyed when I first heard it.
Yeah, I was into it, yeah.
On further listens, like before the album came out, I was really liking it. And with the album now out, I think Emergence is a great song. Love the saxophone at the end.
Yeah.
It's just, it has some of that magic there, you know? Another song that does capture that magic for me is actually the title track, which is this ballad in the middle of the album. And I'm listening to this, and the atmosphere that this band creates with the music is so good. And obviously all the albums are great with that. This song is a really, really good example, you know, from the new record as to that. And it's funny because Emergence has the really nice saxophone at the end. Title track has really nice violin at the end. And I'm hearing this and it's giving me the goosebumps. I'm like, yes, this is the magic. But does the rest of the album have that same magic? Not really. So I'm gonna touch upon what my least favorite song is on the album to illustrate some of the issues that I had, and that song is Caramel. That is the second single from this album. We unfortunately didn't get the chance to check it out, or the third one, which is Damocles. Caramel, to me, felt like very paint-by-numbers Sleep Token. I feel like everything that song does is something I've already heard this band do, and probably do a little bit better.
Yeah.
So it kind of felt like, you know, that it was a same old kind of feeling here. Like, I feel like if you just kind of told someone, you know, here's the sum of all Sleep Token, give me what just is kind of everything, this, you know, it didn't really feel like it stood out that much. And for me, like, I know what the lyrics are about. I kind of wish I didn't, because a lot of it pertains to the issue of having this band blow up and the pressure and struggles from being that popular now, but then also issues from the fan base as well, and the toxic parts of that. So hearing, you know, this come out in the lyrics honestly made me uncomfortable to listen to.
I found it cringy. Like, it's just like, ugh, come on, get over it.
Like, for me, you know, listening to this kind of felt like they're breaking kayfabe. You know, to put it, I guess in wrestling terms, it feels like, you know, you got Vessel, you got this whole thing, and they got kind of like these pieces of story, and you kind of put it together like Dark Souls
like
style.
An illusion they've created.
There's a whole thing there. So this kind of just feels like him stepping out of the box and saying, this is getting a little bit much. This part of the fan base is come on, stop.
Yeah.
And it kind of just breaks part of that immersion.
It's
that
like breaking character, yeah.
It almost feels like that. And I feel like Damocles covers similar topics, but does it way better. It feels like less of a forced song, as in like it feels more, I don't want to say unique, but it kind of feels, it's got a little bit more soul to it that way. And it feels like it kind of touches upon these issues of the sudden rise to fame like that, just better than Caramel. Like, it does everything that Caramel does better than it, in my opinion at least.
Yeah.
It's got this friendliness to it, but it's very sad at the same time. Kind of like Do You Wish That You Loved Me from the last record. It's kind of like that. You know, it's kind of friendly sounding, but it's like it's him talking to himself, like trying to accept himself.
Right.
So I feel like even though overall there were good songs here and there, you know, something like the last track, Infinite Baths, which is kind of funny that they end it by just jamming it out in this really cool breakdown, which
that was cool though.
It's kind of what they did on the last album, almost.
I think it's a good way to close out the song and the album as a whole.
It is a great way to do that. Don't get me wrong at all. It's just funny that on the last record, the title track does exactly that, but then there's Euclid as the ending. So and I was always thinking like, oh, imagine if this title track was like the end. That's what a way to end the album. So it's funny, the next album, that's what they did.
True.
But I do think there is cool stuff here and there. And once again, the atmosphere is great, as they always like to do. I just kind of feel like it doesn't feel as inspired as something like the last record. The last record had a lot of variety, twists and turns and surprises, whereas this record has a lot of stuff that you kind of come to expect, and it doesn't, I wouldn't say it starts pulling punches, but I'd say there are songs where it's like, yep, they're gonna do this, then they're gonna do that. Vessel is rapping a lot more on this than ever before.
Definitely got more of a hip hop vibe.
Yeah.
And it's like a little bit less of the R&B and more of the hip hop.
It's more focused on the hip hop and poppier stuff than when it was fused with the metal and the R&B and the jazz and the this and then that. There were a lot more moving parts in previous work, whereas with this one's a little bit more focused, but I kind of feel like some of it is just like a bit of come and go, but overall, generally, it is good. Just didn't really capture the magic like the last one did for me.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with a lot of what you just said about it just not having kind of the luster that the last album had, and it felt a lot more kind of predictable. But that could just be because you're more familiar with their style and you kind of know what they kind of do. Yeah. So you kind of come to expect certain things and stuff like that.
And it's also hard to follow up an album like that too, especially with how they blew up from that album. It's like, now what? You know?
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like Sleep Token, they kind of like perfected a certain recipe that kind of blew them up, and they're kind of replicating that recipe a lot. And in a sense, it makes this album sound like it's got a lot of filler. There's definitely certain songs or certain moments on this album that shine, but I feel like a lot of it is just kind of, I don't know, it feels like it's just there to be there, and it doesn't really have, like you said, the magic that the last album had. And I mean, I don't have a better word to describe it than that. I liked a couple of the songs. Emergence is still a highlight for me. I think that's it was a good choice for a first single.
Yeah.
And I like the song. I like the beat in that song and everything.
Did the hook grow on you? Because I know you said in the reaction it got a little repetitive for you.
It's still repetitive, and it's the intro that's too long. How it kind of repeats a lot in the intro. But once the song kicks in, and you have that syncopated beat that everybody's kind of going crazy over, I really like that. I like the saxophone outro, like you mentioned too. There's just a lot of elements that I think make that song kind of a complete Sleep Token package. So yeah, it's a good song. Another song that I liked on my listen is track number 9, Gethsemane.
Oh, that was a good one too. Yeah.
I thought that was interesting because Vessel sings in a higher pitch on this song. I'm not sure if he's singing a head voice or not. I can't remember. I used to be able to tell head voice between non-head voice and head voice pretty easily, but this one I was struggling with a little bit. It goes into some pretty interesting beats for a while. But the problem is, and this is a problem with me in a lot of Sleep Token songs, is they kind of lose me as I'm listening to them. And, I think they just, I don't know. This is not a band that I've ever really loved. It's a band that I appreciate. I think they got a lot of talent, and I think they're doing some unique things in the musical field. But it's hard for them to really grip me and really hold my attention for very long. And, that's a me thing or whatever, but overall, I think this album was fine. Like I said, I think there's a lot of filler in there. I think fans of the band will like it, but again, like you said, I don't think it's gonna be as strong as the last. Yeah, last album.
I've seen people's eyes. I've seen people all over it. I've seen some people similar to me with the opinions. Obviously, you'll get any kinds of opinions anywhere about it, but I do know that like the super diehards, they'll love it no matter what. And power to you. Like I said, it's good.
Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the shit of God.
What a name.
By Behemoth.
Well, speaking of the shit of God, that was the first single they dropped, and we reacted to that.
We did.
I still like it, even on the album. And you know what? This is a perfect example of a song needing to be heard in context of the album to really get the full experience, because you got 2 songs that are a lot more energetic before that, and then it starts just with the vocals, and then boom, like this.
Very grand sounding, like almost anthemic in a way.
Anthemic, yes, and on top of that, like it's a bit of a slower burner overall, so it's like just, it's got
a punch.
The punch is slow, but still very powerful, and I think that makes it even more effective as a song on the album, because it's preceded by the first 2, which are a lot faster, more intense, which are The Shadow Elite and Sowing Salt. Shadow Elite, of which being the second single, we did react to that as well, which had a really, really cool video.
Yeah, where they're all in the cage.
With the cage and everyone outside, and that was super duper cool. Yeah. So, Behemoth is a band they I know we've kind of discussed this before with this band, but they've become a little bit pretty consistent. This is our 3rd time covering a Behemoth album on the channel. We reviewed the last 2
Yeah.
Opus Contra Naturae and I Loved You at Your Darkest, which had some pretty cool stuff on both those records. I think I was a bit more favorable towards them than you were in our reviews.
Yeah.
But it feels like they've kind of been consistent in a sense of like, yeah, this is Behemoth and that's just what they do. Nothing on this album really jumped out as like, whoa, what the fuck was that? But there were a few songs here and there that I thought had some cool small bits, but overall it was like, yeah, this is a solid Behemoth, evil black metal album.
Yeah.
So for example, you got something like the hook of Sowing Salt, the ride groove he's got on the bell there, thought that was pretty cool. Or a song like the title track. I think that kind of anthemic hook reminded me of some parts of God Equals Dog from I Loved You at Your Darkest, which, I mean, I love that song. I don't know if you recall that one.
Yep.
The third single was Luciferian. And that was the third single. It was fine. It was the kind of song where I'm like, yeah, this is just like good Behemoth, I guess, but nothing really stood out about that. But To Drown the Sun in Wine, that one's a super barn burner. Like that's the kind of song where you hear that, and if you might not have known it, you're like, oh yeah, I gotta jump in the pit for that.
Yeah.
That was a good one. And I also like the last track as well. There were these like spooky operatic kind of screaming, I don't know what to describe it, in the background, which was cool. And the ending has a little bit of clean vocals too. I thought that was neat. But yeah, generally, it's good Behemoth. They've kind of become pretty consistent at this point, but like it's not like bad. And also really good drum performance as well.
Of course.
Guy might have some octobans because I heard some tom fills that were starting pretty high up. So that was cool.
Yeah, I'm not surprised about that at all. That's I always expect elite level drumming when listening to Behemoth. But yeah, I thought this album was really good. It's pretty consistent with the last couple albums and kind of their sound as of recent years. The takeaways for me were the intro track, the outro track. Both I thought were fantastic. Great way to start the album with the Shadow Elite. I just thought it was a great opening track. There's a really cool, a wild scream that happens before the bridge. I thought that was kind of unique. I'm like, have I ever heard Nergal scream like that before?
I made a note about that too. That scream, whoa, what was that?
It was interesting. So, really cool song. And then skipping to the end of the album, Anger the Dread Vulture, I think that's what it is. Just a rad song, man. Like just balls to the walls, rad stuff. Great way to end the album. Everything in between there is basically what you'd expect from modern day Behemoth. It's well polished, it's clean, it's it's got their signature sound. The highlight for me in the middle of the album is Luciferian. So it surprised me a little bit that you thought it was just kind of an average song, but I really liked the energy on the song. I had great riffs. I really loved the parts where the double bass was kicking in. It just had that drive to it, and everything else in between was pretty good. Did I love it? Did I think it was amazing? No. Was I adding songs to the playlist right away? No. I think this is an album that will take a few more listens before I can really, really appreciate the quality that's really there. But for a first listen, I think it's a solid putting out by Behemoth.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So moving on, let's talk about the Bunny the Bear. The moments that cost. Care to say how we found out that they were dropping?
Okay, so I'll just backtrack a little bit. So I discovered this band like a year and a half ago-ish, and it was the song called Isle that somebody put me onto, and I love that song. I think it's so good. I listen to it every once in a while. And I checked out some of their other stuff, but nothing really grabbed me like Isle did. But I always thought, I'm gonna keep my eyes and ears open for anything new these guys put out because I wanna cover it. So I was out earlier today, and I was listening to Ghost Bath, which we'll get to in a minute and talk about it. But then I had this weird urge, just like, haven't listened to the Bunny the Bear in a while. So while I was driving, I just, put on the Bunny the Bear to hear the song Isle and just jammed it in my car while I was driving. And then when I got home, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna Google the band and see if they're putting anything out, like if they're doing anything in 2025, just so I can keep my eyes and ears open. Yeah. Only to find out that they dropped an album today. I'm like, what?
You cannot have
a random coincidence.
More perfect timing.
That just happened. So I was like, all right. So I messaged TV Fish. I'm like, hey, the Bunny the Bear dropped an album today. You want to squeeze it in? And he's like, yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
So The Moments That Cost is the name of the album. And I felt like I knew what I was getting into. Because the song Isle, the stuff that I've heard before, is like post-hardcore, metalcore, alternative. It's got a blend of styles, but it's on the heavier side of the spectrum, right? So I listened to this, and I was completely kind of thrown back because this is very poppy. This is very pop rock. I was getting reminded of a lot of different things, from Flyleaf to like maybe 90s grunge, like stuff like Garbage. And I'm mentioning a lot of female-led things because the main vocalist of this band is female. Avril Lavigne, I was getting Avril Lavigne vibes here, just from some of the pop rock type of stuff.
I feel like some aspects of Spirit Box you could compare.
Spirit Box. I was also getting a bit of Linkin Park vibes on this. So if you don't know the band, it's called The Bunny the Bear, and it's a 2-vocalist band. One's called The Bunny, one's called The Bear. The original Bear vocalist passed away, unfortunately.
I think after like 3 records?
I'm not sure.
I think the original band had like a few.
I'm not sure, but the new Bear is a female vocalist. The first 2 vocalists were both male, so the original Bunny is still there. And he was always kind of the hardcore singer, like very yelly, very harsh, yelly kind of, hardcore kind of guy. And the Bear kind of did a hardcore voice too, but he also had a very high falsetto, like very high pitched, like, I don't know, I love that style of vocal, and that's what drew me to the band. The new Bear, who's female and who can hit the high notes, doesn't really do it a lot on here, if at all, really. So the first song on the album is Isle Redux, which I'm like, oh, Isle. That's the song that made me like this band.
Run it back.
Let's run it back. Awesome song, but it doesn't quite hit the spot like the original does. And I don't really know if there's somebody to blame for that or whatever, but it's a weird thing to do, to kind of like rewrite your best hit and not do it justice. It feels a little bit like a disservice.
So how you're a bit more into this band than I am. This is basically like my first time actually really putting my hands on an album. I've heard a few things here and there when you showed me. I did think they were cool, but I didn't do any deep dive.
Yeah.
How similar is this to the original Isle? Like,
it's not that, like, there's stuff about it that's similar, but the last one, it just has a bit of like, there's a bit of a rawness to it. Like, it almost sounds like a bit underproduced. It almost sounds like they recorded it in a garage or something like that. But there's a bit of charm to that. There's a bit of like, a bit of appreciation there for stuff like that.
So, but like, is it basically the same song just created differently, or is it like, did they change everything?
They didn't change everything. Like, you can listen to them back to back. They're not vastly different, but they're also not identical.
Yeah.
Right? There's certain things they changed. It almost feels like a remix in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to really explain exactly what it sounds like, but either way, moving on from that, there's just a lot of stuff on here that's really poppy sounding. There's electronic stuff in here. There's some elements of some hardcore stuff and some kind of, metal sounding or metal adjacent kind of sounds in there. But overall, this album was very soft compared to what I was expecting. I was expecting something a little bit more along the lines of like a metalcore type of vibe. Not to say that it's bad, but when you're kind of expecting one thing and you don't get it, it automatically kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth, and you're kind of left going, where's the stuff that I came here for? Right? That's kind of how I felt listening to it. I also feel like the Bunny, who's basically the edge of the band, like he's the one that gives the band its punch.
He's like barely there.
He's barely there. And I was trying to think of like a percentage in my head. I'm like, maybe he's there like 10% of the time. Like, it's probably a little more. He's probably there 20% of the time as a vocalist. And the Bear does 80% of the vocals. And she's a fine vocalist. There's nothing wrong with her vocals. But again, the thing that drew me to this band was the original Bears vocalist, and him singing so high on that one song, and I just wish she pulled that out of the pocket a little bit more.
Yeah.
That would have maybe drew me in a little bit more, despite the fact that a lot of this was giving me like a lot of poppy kind of generic alternative music type of vibes, which again is not bad, but when it's not something you're really wanting at this time, you kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. That's for me, yeah.
I did a bit of research on it. They've been through many Bears, actually. I believe this current one is like the 6th Bear.
Oh, wow.
So they've had a lot of Bears.
Were they all with mixture of male and female, or?
I don't actually know. I didn't look into that, but I just know that there have been many bears in the Bunny the Bear.
Wow.
So I think this is like number 6. So I don't know this band that much, but I thought to myself, I'm like, yeah, isn't this like a super energetic, like post-hardcore kind of thing? So I put this on. I'm like, what am I listening to?
Yeah.
It just caught me so off guard. I'm like, oh, so this is like more of an electronic metalcore kind of thing, really hinging on more of a catchy, poppier kind of sound. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like, I'm totally all for bands trying to do their own thing, trying to break out of any kind of box or experiment and do that. That's all good. It just kind of caught me out by surprise. Wasn't what I expected. Kind of wasn't really what I necessarily wanted from what I knew about this band. So there was a bit of disappointment there, but there were some parts of some songs I kind of liked more than others. You look at a song like Complacent, that one's not bad, but I feel like some of these songs would be a bit more enjoyable if I kind of just like heard them on their own rather than just kind of bam all together, because a lot of them kind of do a similar thing. So I'm just like, what? But the Bunny, not only is he barely there at all and is barely utilized, the mix on his voice sucks. He's either behind everything or it sounds like they shoved him in a tin can.
This band's always had a trouble with their production, I find. Like I said, even Isle, it sounds like it was recorded in a garage or something like that. Like
the thing with that kind of stuff, and we've talked about that kind of thing before, especially when we covered stuff like that, the Dark Throne album. But you know, there's charm in poor production, there's charm or intention in lower production, but there's some sweet spots you can hit to still make it really palatable. You know, you look at the stuff like that old school black metal, it's more so like we do this and it's meant to be like this. Yeah. But then you look at people who either genuinely had that sound or they tried to force it, you know, and there's varying results. There's some bands where it's like we try to aim for that kind of garage sound. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. So in this sense, though, I don't think you can this is a very, very pristine, kind of cleanly produced album. So I think there's no excuse for the Bunny's vocals to either be behind everything or just like washed out. Like, what's up with that? Yeah. So I kind of felt like it leaned towards the sound of like the softer aspects of a band like Fit for a King or kind of like those aspects of Spirit Box. Yeah. It wasn't what I was expecting. Definitely would need to give it more listens to really kind of get more of a firm opinion now that I'm not as surprised.
And you won't be like, yeah, exactly.
And I know what I know what I'm looking, know what I'm getting into. So it's kind of a weird first impression, but I'm all for bands trying something different. So I respect it.
Cool. All right, let's talk about the last album of our day, Rose Thorn Necklace. Badass album title. Ghost Bath.
Ghost Bath.
So you can go ahead and take the floor.
So I heard of this band in a very strange way.
Ooh.
There is an ambient artist named Begotten, who was this anonymous, mysterious thing. There's this whole story. There's like this one guy, I think his name is Pad Chennington, did this amazing video on it. Go check it out. But basically, to skip over the details of the Begotten stuff, the guy who's actually behind Begotten is in this band, is part of this band. Okay. And I believe Begotten was part of the same label that Ghost Bath was part of. So that's how I heard of Ghost Bath. Okay. Like, okay, this black metal band. They had an album in 2018 called Funeral, and I remember being like, oh yeah, I knew Ghost Bath. I want to say I listened to it back then, but I actually don't remember. So if I did, cool, but I don't remember what it sounded like. Mm-hmm. But the main thing I was thinking, like, yeah, I know this is a black metal band, and I'm looking forward to finally cover them on the channel as well. So that's kind of weird way of how I discovered and got interested in this band. And I wasn't expecting this album to be as colorful as it was. Because I think, obviously, it has the evil, dark, sinister sounds of black metal that you know and love, especially more so kind of like later second wave of black metal. Super duper cool, but there's so many beautiful melodic guitar parts and two long and really, really fruitful instrumental interludes. Like one of them is 3 minutes, the other one's 2 minutes, and usually it's like, oh man, those are way too long, but they're so enveloping. The atmosphere of this album is unreal because it's got this dichotomy of beauty and despair, really. Yeah. Because it's a
very juxtaposed album.
It is. So it's like they'll do all this stuff, like, the title track has this super duper clean intro, and then bam, you get the atmospheric black metal. There's this like screaming and wailing in the background. It's like, what the fuck is that? Beautiful guitar solo at the end. I'm just like, oh, this is cool. So then on top of that, you have these juicy guitar melodies. This drummer's fantastic. You got amazing fills, great performances from everyone. Like, I'm just surprised, like, wow, this is really good. This is really creative, engaging, and interesting. Something like the second interlude, which one was that? Needles.
Needles, yeah.
It's this piano piece, but it's got like this, I wouldn't say specifically distortion, but this effect on it that makes it just sound eerie and uncomfortable, and I love that.
Well, it kind of had like it almost sounded like a lo-fi recording.
Yeah.
Which gave it that old school black metal vibe as well. There's a few tracks that actually do that, 2 or 3 tracks, where they kind of do this lo-fi thing. Like another one was Vodka Butterfly, track number 6. It starts off lo-fi, gives it that old school black metal vibe, but then it slowly fades into hi-fi, which is kind of cool. I've never heard that before. I've never actually heard a band do that before. But yeah, those elements of anguish and despair and that sinister kind of darkness of black metal is throughout this whole album, but it's juxtaposed by all this beautiful stuff, this nice calm guitaring, these beautiful piano passages, these just soft, eloquent parts. I don't know, like it could be guitar, it could be whatever. And it's just, they're woven in between each other, and it just creates such a unique package. You don't know what's coming next, but it all still sounds very cohesive. It all still works together. It's very depressing, despite the fact that some of it sounds colorful and it sounds bright. It's all still very dark. This is a
grim album.
It's a grim album. It's lyrically, this is a depressed and sad band. There's a lot of songs about suicide and things like that. So it feels like a very well-written piece of work.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's a lot of thought that's gone into it.
For sure.
And, just the combination of the harsh black metal elements with the calmer, peaceful sounding parts, it really just kind of impressed me from listening to it for the first time. Now, as far as Ghostbath goes as a band, I didn't know much about this band. When we found out this album was coming out and we decided to do it on the channel, I went and listened to a couple singles and was like, okay, I kind of know what I'm getting into. This is a black metal band, pretty cool. But I didn't really get the full picture until I listened to the whole album and really realized it's not just a typical black metal band. They're adding elements in there and they're really kind of standing out in their own right. And I'm just noticing that you're wearing a Ghost shirt.
I know.
I feel like, no, it's not even about the Ghost and the Ghostbath. That's just a coincidence. But I feel like this is, if I looked at the band Ghost, this is what I think they would sound like.
Oh, like from the image, the visual?
From the image of what Ghost looks like.
Okay.
This Ghostbath is what I feel like they should sound like. But that's a completely random point.
Okay.
But I thought this album was really interesting. It's got a lot of cool stuff. I'm a little bit concerned with the interludes. Like you said, Thinly Sliced Heart Muscle is over 3 minutes long. Cool, another cool song title. But it's a pretty long interlude. And then you got Needles, which is over 2 minutes long. It's really nice, but again, it's pretty long for an interlude. Those two things could start to weigh on the album a little bit, but that remains to be seen. So.
Yeah, I mean, we've decided that this is the album that we're going to review throughout the week and then come back with our final review. And scores, it is Rose Thorn Necklace by Ghostbath. As you can see, we are both excited to dive into this album, give it the test of time, and pick apart all the creative stuff that they've put into this piece of work. Anyway, guys, that's all we got for you today. Remember to like the video if you liked it. Tell us in the comments below, what do you think of today's new releases? And if you're into Ghostbath or if you're into Begotten, let us know. We love to hear what you guys have to say. So subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm TV Fish.
I'm by myself.
And see you guys later.